I'm gonna come for you. Ow. How fucking dare you?
In the deepest depths of Stirling University lies a man who ponders important questions. Not questions like, what's the meaning of life, or why are we here? But questions that center over one concept. How do I scare my audience? Tonight, he will answer that question, reading tales that are so utterly horrifying they may leave you weak at the knees. Welcome to the Spook Zone.
Ladies, gentlemen, other Eldritch Abominations, I welcome you to the semester finale of the Spook Zone. Yes, this is the final show of the year, really. It is the 1st of December. It's cold, really cold. Like this entire studio is just a nightmare in terms of heat. It's really not that. It's not nice. But in any case, yeah, I see it no reason to not to do a Spook Zone today, because hey ho, I might as well get one in. I missed last week just because I was so busy with exams and all that sort of jazz. I'm still busy with exams right now, but I'm a little bit more confident that, well, the thing is, I argue that getting up in the morning is really important for me to start actually doing work, because if I don't get up in the morning and I don't like stay in my bed till 12, then I'll be fine. If I do stay to my bed till 12, then it's all over and I'm not going into the library to do the work. So this show is great for making me go, hey, I should get up. And then I got up, and it was great, and I'm here. So I'm going to do some essay work today. It's going to be great. In any case, enough babbling on about my life. Let's talk about horror. Specifically, how today I'm not going to be reading from the Necronomicon. I have had a thought, and also this is a combination of a conversation I had and the 24-hour broadcast kind of made me think this. Constantly reading Lovecraft, it can be stale, and also I don't want to constantly have a time where it's just like I'm reading a story and I'm always having to constantly just say, hey, this guy's written something terrible, because sometimes Lovecraft does that. I want to read something that's a little bit less prone to being bad in terms of its ideologies. And if I do that, maybe it'll be a more enjoyable time for all around. So I'm going to give a different author a go this time, a different classical author, by the name of Edgar Allan Poe, of which I read on the 24-hour broadcast. It was really good. We read a story called The Black Cat, and it was really good. Yeah. But today, we're going to read a classic, apparently, according to Daniel Wright, who is also doing a show right here, right now, which is on occasionally. It's really good. You should totally check him out if you have a chance. Check that out on the Air 3 schedule. We're going to be doing a different story by Poe today. We're going to be doing The Telltale Heart, apparently a classic, and I'm kind of keen to see how this goes, because I've never read it before. Yeah, as is usually the case in this show, I usually read things blind. So we're going to read this as it is, a brand new affair. Hopefully we all enjoy ourselves. Hopefully it's a great time for all involved. Hopefully it's kind of spooky. That's the point of the show. And afterwards, we will be reading A Christmas Tale, because, hey, it's December, might as well do something winter Christmassy themed before I leave you all for the rest of December. Yeah, let's get this show on the road. This is The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. First published in 1850. Funnily enough, very interesting. Here we go. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am, but why? Will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all the things in heaven and the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how the first idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take up the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, at this point, you fancy me mad. Madman! No, nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him, and every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently, and then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern all closed, so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it so slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern, cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it, just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And I did this for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, inquiring how he has passed the night. So, you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he had not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed, suddenly as if startled. Now, you may think that I drew back, but no, his room was as pitch black as the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed fastened through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing on, steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle. And in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening just as I had done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It wasn't a groan of pain or of grief. Oh, no. It was the low stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied at him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He hadn't been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor," or "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes! He has been trying to comfort himself with these superstitions, but he had found them all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a very long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from out the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with my perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones, but I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. Have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew the sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into rage. But even I yet refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how stealthily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him, and then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, didn't vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed, examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head with the arms and legs. I then took the 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labours, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor of the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at a police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, but for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed to them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was surprisingly at ease. Singularly, I should say. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things, but ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat and chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt, I grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I aroused and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced to the floor and to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, God! What could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair open, upon which I had been sitting, and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard it not? Almighty God! No, they heard, they suspected, they knew, they were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now again! Hark! Louder! 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 Villains! I shrieked. Disassemble no more! I admit the deed! Tear up the planks here! Here! It is this beating of his hideous heart. Woo! I loved that one. But I gotta admit, I've noticed something. This is a thing that I've noticed between two of the two Poe stories that I've read so far. He's very he makes these stories very actable, I guess. They're very full of emotion, and they really put your mind in the speaker's head. It's a sort of train of thought sort of thing. No, not train of thought. Oh gosh, I've forgotten the term for it. Essentially, you write in the sense that you constantly are just thinking, like writing what the person is thinking, almost. This story was fun to read because it's like all of the little things I did, a little bit emotional bits, you can get from the way it's written. The pauses, the dashes, the actual literal bits of laughter in this are really good, because it means that you can just act it. You can get into the mind of this person really easily, and I think that's that's a really, really cool thing. What can I criticize if I'm thinking about it? I think one of the things that that's weirds me out a little bit is, I think sometimes I just feel like the characters in Poe's stories that just go a little so far, I would say, that just go mad, don't. I'm not sure if they would have a very, they have a clear reason for it. That not to say they have to have one, but I think sometimes it's nice to like clarify why a person is thinks that a man's eye is following him and trying and mocking him. But then again, maybe sometimes you can't really explain these things, and maybe that's the point. It's a very interesting story. I liked it a lot. Hopefully I didn't get too loud there. I saw the microphone thing peak a lot because I was getting into it a bit too much. But that's fine. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read a bit of poetry from Pope for the 30-minute mark. And then what we're going to do is we're going to read a Christmas story, because Christmas is fun. So I'm debating whether or not I should do the bells or the raven. The raven's a long poem, that's for sure. Bells is a little bit less long. Actually, probably is exactly the same length. You know what? I'm gonna read the bells. I think this seems like a fun one. So I'm gonna read the bells. And it's gonna be a very interesting little tale. So here we go. This is The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe. Originally written, or published I should say, in 1849. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they twinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heaven seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tintinnabulation that so musically wells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight from the molten golden notes, and all in tune. What a liquid ditty floats to the turtle dove that listens while she floats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells, how it swells, how it dwells on the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarum bells, brazen bells. What tale of terror now their turbulency tells? In the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright, too horrified to speak, they can only shriek, shriek out of tune, in a clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, 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 with a desperate desire and a resolute endeavour. Now to sit, or never, by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, 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 what tale their terror tells of despair! How they clang and clash and roar, what a horror they outspour on the bosom of the palpitating air. Yet the ear, it fully knows by the twanging and the clanging how the danger ebbs and flows, yet the ear distinctly tells in the jangling and the wrangling how the danger sinks and swells by the sinking or the swelling in the anger of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 and the clamour and the clangour of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells. What a world of solemn thought the monody compels in the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy meaning of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan, and the people are the people that they dwell upon the steeple all alone, and who toiling, 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 in that muffled monotone feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls, and the ring that and their king it is who tolls, and he rolls, 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 rolls. A paean from the bells, and his merry bosom swells with the paean of the bells, and he dances and he yells, keeping time, time, in a sort of runic rhyme to the paean of the bells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme to the throbbing of the bells, 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 to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, 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 as he knells, 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 in a happy runic rhyme to the rolling of the bells, 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 to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the moaning and the groaning of the bells. Ooh, that was interesting. It was sort of the way that this is sort of indented, or at least on the website that I'm looking at, which is poststories.com, by the way. It seems to be a very nice compendium of Edgar Allan Poe's stories. It has sort of done it in a way that makes me like, I don't know. There's something about it that makes me like, that makes it very sort of rhythmic. I suppose that's kind of the point, because it's constantly like, but ding, 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 the bells, 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 bells. I'm going to actually look the bells poem up a little bit. The Bells is apparently, this is according to Wikipedia, is a heavily onomatopoeic poem that Edgar Allan Poe wrote, not published until his death until after his death in 1849. So it's a very interesting poem. It's written in a way. It was written in an interesting way. It's quite indented and weirdly structured. So it's a nice little poem. Right. Okay. So we've reached the half-hour point basically, and I wanna do Christmas. I wanna look at Christmas stories because Christmas is Christmas and Christmas is great. I need to actually see if I can find one. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I'm looking for stories. This is really difficult because Christmas is hard to find when it comes to creepy stories. Dee. Trying to find it. Let's see if we can find a good Christmas story. 9.1. That must be a very good story if that's the case. Let's have a look. CCC. Does this look like a fun time? I wonder if this was posted 2 years ago. Crikey. Is there any sign by who this is actually by? Because I think I might read this if this is the case. It's apparently 18 minutes long. And yeah, I think this would be a fun time. 9.1 out of 10 from 1,212 votes. That's a lot of people saying it's good. Alright, I will believe this. I will believe this. And I will, in fact, give this story a read. because hey ho, there's nothing better than a Christmas tale, I suppose. Yeah. Anyway, let's get on with it then. Let's have a good go of it. This is The Perfectly Behaved Boy by Thomas O. I hope you all enjoy. I have no idea what to expect. Let's give it a go. There once was a very well-behaved 8-year-old boy named Miles. He did all the things that good children are supposed to do nearly all the time. He ate all his vegetables unless they were carrots. He completed all of his school assignments, except for that one time he forgot to finish his homework. He was always nice to his friends, unless you count that one time when he yelled at his schoolmate, Tony. And he never spoke back to his parents or got mad at them, with very rare exceptions. Yes, he was nearly perfect, and he was a joy for his parents to raise almost all the time. That boy existed more than 30 years ago, and in a manner of speaking, he still exists. That boy, he's me, and he will always be part of who I am. I can remember every transgression I made as a child, not only because there were so few of them, but because I think they ended up shaping my life in a way you could never imagine. Of all my misdeeds, the one that stands out the most vividly is the very last time I yelled at my parents. The funny thing is, even though I can remember being mad and I can remember every word I said, I don't exactly recall why I was upset. When I try to think of the reason, it's like looking back at a blank sheet of paper in my mind. I can tell you that it wasn't anything that my adult self would find consequential, but I know it felt important at the time. It was 2 days before Christmas, and the words I spoke felt foreign as they came out of my mouth, probably because I'd never said anything quite like it before. Go away! I don't want you to be here anymore. I don't want you to talk to me ever again. I could see the hurt in my parents' eyes as I unleashed my tirade towards them. Even now, I'm surprised at what profound effect the words from my 8-year-old self had on them. Their dismay was mixed with obvious shock upon hearing me lash out. My mother had a look on her face that was confused, sad, and angry all at the same time. My father was harder to read but I knew he wasn't happy. Sadly, the looks on their faces were among the last memories I have of my parents. Distraught scowls burned into my mind, two visages that are now a permanent part of my psyche. By the time that Christmas Eve came around, all had been forgiven. Whatever the issue had been, it was resolved. My mother cooked a special ham dinner, and we had a roaring fire going. The house was warm and extra comfortable, and in the hours after dinner I sat and sipped from a mug full of hot cocoa with peppermint. I no longer believed in Santa Claus, but that didn't stop me from feeling a natural Yuletide excitement. I fell asleep that night, staring at the dazzling lights and shiny ornaments that clung to our Christmas tree. I vaguely remember my father carrying me to my bedroom, giving me a little kiss on the forehead. I awoke that night to the feeling of someone poking their finger into my back. Wake up, kid. It was a voice I'd never heard before, a man's voice with a slight drawl. My eyes opened widely as I instinctively rolled out of bed in outright panic. I fell to the floor and screamed for my father. I was trapped in a corner of my bedroom, and I could see the man's silhouetted figure looming clearly in front of me, a small red glow from a cigarette in his hand. I froze in fear of this stranger who had invaded my home. The man spoke to me again. Quiet down. He can't hear you right now anyhow. He put his cigarette to his lips and inhaled deeply. As he did, his face was illuminated by the red glow, and I could see his deep-set eyes, his dirty fingers, and his long black hair. But kid, I can hear you. I can hear you better than anybody in ways you can't even understand. He pointed at the back of his forehead as he spoke, side of his forehead as he spoke. I didn't reply, But even through my fear, I couldn't help but wonder who the man was. He nodded, as if he knew exactly what I was thinking. So, you'd like to know who I am? Well, I'm the guy who's turned into your mind. I'm the guy that's been around for a very long time, and most importantly, I'm the guy who gives kids what they ask for. He looked straight into my eyes, invading my mind and reading my thoughts. No, kid, I ain't Santa. He was agitated. You stupid. Do I really look like that fat fucker? No, I'm much better. I don't judge. I don't discriminate. I give kids what they ask for. The good kids. And the bad kids. I finally found the courage to speak, even though he seemed to have no trouble answering my questions before I even asked them. I didn't ask for anything. My voice trembled as I spoke. Sure you did. You wanted your parents to go away. I heard that loud and clear. Not very nice of you. I'd say that makes you a bad little boy, but don't worry. Like I said, I don't discriminate. But I don't want them to go away. He shook his head. You said it. You meant it at the time. I heard it. I don't hear all the kids, just some of them, and I heard you loudest of all. Tears began streaming down my face, but their presence didn't seem to change the visitor's demeanor towards me. Well, kid, I just wanted to meet you and see whose voice has been screaming in my head the past few days. He turned and started walking towards the door. I gotta get started. Time to give you your gift, and got a gift for myself too. Merry fucking Christmas, kid. He flicked the cigarette into the corner of my bedroom as he passed through the doorway, repeating himself as he walked down the hallway in the direction of my parents' bedroom. Merry fucking Christmas. The door to my bedroom shut, even though the man himself had made no effort to close it. I screamed aloud for my mother and my father. To this day, I have no idea if they heard me. I wish I could tell you that. I wish I could tell you how I bravely ran out of my bedroom to warn them, but I just sat huddled in the corner, crying and afraid. I listened intently for sounds of a struggle or for my parents yelling, but I couldn't hear anything. Hours passed, and I could see the outside sky turn from black to grey, then to orange. I waited for my mother and father to find me, the orange sky turning blue as the day wore on, but they never came. An absolute silence hung over the house, yet still I sat there. It was well into afternoon when I finally left my room. I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I tiptoed slowly to my door and opened it a few inches. Looking out from inside my room, the house appeared normal. Everything that I could see was in its place. I pulled the door open all the way, almost expecting the man from the night before to jump out at me, but that didn't happen. My voice broke the silence. Mom? Dad? No response. Trying my best to stay quiet, I walked slowly down the hallway towards my parents' bedroom. The door was ajar. Dad? I put my hand on the door. Mom? I pushed it open and looked inside. I don't actually remember what I saw. To be clear, I'm perfectly aware of the fate that befell my parents based on what was told to me later on, but I have no memory of the actual sight that I witnessed during that awful moment. It's a traumatic event that my mind has blocked out. Even today, when I recreate the events of that night in my dream, the scene fades to white as I push the door open. My next memory is of me laying down in the street directly outside my house, screaming, flailing my arms wildly. The Porter family who lived next door witnessed my distress through the living room window. Porter exited his house and rushed over to me, and he could tell something was seriously wrong. They're dead. It was all I could say. I repeated it again and again. Mrs. Porter followed closely behind her husband and comforted me, as he went inside to check the house. And later he exited, and promptly vomited in the bushes. Nobody has ever told me the full story of what they found in that bedroom, at least not directly. It was explained to me that a very bad person had broken into my house and murdered my parents, even though I already knew as much. What was held back from me at the time was the fact that they'd been decapitated. Cuts were clean, almost surgical. Both bodies were lying on the bed as if they'd been asleep when it happened. Worst part was that their heads were missing, not to be found anywhere. Bodies sliced open, and then strange symbols were drawn on the wall in blood. Other than the carnage itself, absolutely no physical evidence was discovered at the scene. Not a single footprint, fingerprint, stray hair, or footprint was left behind. Nothing. The police listened to my story once I was ready to talk, and I found out later that I was considered to be an unreliable witness, mostly because the details of my story didn't mesh with the lack of physical evidence. A specially trained detective and my new therapist sat down with me to review what I'd told the police earlier. The man, he wasn't wearing gloves. I shook my head no. I clearly remember the cigarette in his hand. There was no glove. And he threw the cigarette in the ground when he was done smoking it. I nodded yes. And he closed your door when he left your room. I shook my head no. Then I thought about it and nodded my head yes. I wasn't really sure. The detective took notes as I talked. He nodded his head pleasantly, but even then I could see the strange look in his face when I told him that the man had read my thoughts. The one thing I never told the police that 2 days before the murders, I asked my parents to be gone. A sketch artist came by afterwards. He started off by drawing some Smurfs for me. Then he slowly began working me up to the task of remembering what the murderer looked like. I appreciated his effort. When he was done, the picture looked somewhat like how I remembered the man, but not exactly. I was taken in by my mother's sister, Aunt Jane, and her husband, my Uncle Anton. And as unlucky as I had been with the deaths of my parents, I had to say that I was nearly as lucky to have those two in my life. Other than my parents, they were possibly the best people in the world who I could have lived with. Looking back in the events of my life, I have to say that today I miss them just as much as I miss my parents. Janine worked as an office manager, but she took leave of absence in the first 2 months after the murders so that she could be home to support me. Anton worked for a home security firm. He was the kind of man who always had a smile on his face, so much so that it would be impossible for a person to even imagine him angry. He made instant connections with people and had a confidence about him that made people want to seek his approval, whether consciously or unconsciously. Janine and Anton didn't have any children of their own, and they've always been very generous towards me. I knew him well, so it was easy for me to slip into their lives. I put a huge effort into making sure that I gave them no trouble, and I asked them for nothing. My conversation with the murderer was never too far from my thoughts, and I could hear an amalgamation of his comments ring through my mind daily. I give kids what they ask for, the good kids and the bad kids. I didn't know what the good kids were given by this man, but I understood too clearly what happened to the bad kids. It was 2 months before I felt I was ready to go back to school. Janine and Anton, and even the school administration, were very helpful, understanding throughout the whole process. My classmates welcomed me back with smiles and words of encouragement. It's often said that children can be cruel, but I think it's even more true that they can be sweet and supportive. I really can't emphasize enough how much returning to all my friends helped me along in the healing process. My anxiety began to ebb, and my therapist proclaimed it was a major milestone for me. For victims of trauma, anniversaries can often trigger symptoms like depression and fear. For me, Christmas was the anniversary of my worst memory. As the summer ended, Janine and Anton, along with my therapist, decided early on that Christmas wouldn't be celebrated in our household that year. Nobody felt that I'd be ready for it, and they were right, since we knew that Christmas was going to be an ordinary day for us. Jane and Anton made sure to throw me a huge birthday in October that year. When I turned 9, it seemed like most of the community turned out. We had a bounce house, like ponies, even a magician. Everyone, including me, had a great day. It was probably the first time in 10 months that I had grinned. Sure, there had been smiles up to this point, but I'm referring to the type of grin when your teeth show. And the elation on your face, it can't be mistaken. Unfortunately, the joy of my birthday couldn't last forever. Inevitably, the signs of Christmas slowly started popping up not long after Halloween passed, and my anxiety started increasing. Though we weren't going to celebrate it, Christmas would be impossible to ignore. Holiday lights, store displays, television commercials, Yuletide songs pumped over public address systems. How can one not avoid all of those and still function within society. Though these harbingers couldn't be avoided altogether, Janine and Anton made a concerted effort to minimize my exposure. Instead of letting me watch my TV shows, Anton brought me the game of chess, which we played nightly. For the most part, they avoided taking me to any stores and kept me at home or close by as much as possible. Avoiding these triggers probably helped somewhat, but I still couldn't get rid of the tightening feeling in my chest I felt every morning when I woke up. I managed to avoid any sort of breakdown until the 21st of December. Aunt Janine, because she was taking care of me, had herself been staying home an inordinate amount of time. Finally, after our fifth game of rummy in a row, she'd had enough. She tossed her cards aside. You know what, Miles? We've been cooped up here too long. Let's get out of here. We'll go get some ice cream. One little trip couldn't hurt, right? I smiled in response. Okay. Ice cream sounded good, even in the middle of December. Aunt Janine, who was talkative by nature, kept the conversation flowing all the way to the ice cream shop. I suppose this was her attempt to keep my focus away from the lights and displays that we passed, and it worked too. Asked good questions about his favorite superheroes, and he's going to be fairly preoccupied while he talks about them, even the quiet ones. We made it to the shop. I ordered a double scoop of chocolate fudge brownie. We sat down to eat our treats with Aunt Janine still engaging me in conversation. Just for a brief moment, a nearby toy store's glittering Christmas display caught my eye through the window. They had a life-size poster plastered in their display window. It's a picture of Santa on the rooftop, posed in a position as if he were about just ready to climb down a chimney. Blazing Christmas lights surrounded the display, and large words spelled out, "What do you want for Christmas?" I tried to turn away, but the colourful lights clouded my vision, enlarging in their scope until they all combined, finally creating a great light of white. "Miles? Miles!" My aunt's voice was becoming more and more urgent. I suddenly realized she'd been calling my name for several moments. The cup of ice cream jumped from my hand. I just want them back. At that moment, the tears flowed freely, and I could think of nothing else. I was hysterical. Oh my God, Aunt Janine quickly came over to my side of the table. "Oh my God, Miles, I'm so sorry." She grabbed me and hugged me tightly. I reciprocated, holding on to her as firm as I could. "This was a bad idea. I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm sorry I brought you out. That was stupid of me. I'm so sorry. I missed them too." It took 15 minutes for Aunt Janine to calm me to a point where I could leave the shop. We left our unfinished ice creams behind. No other incidents happened in the next couple of days, and my interactions with Aunt and Janine helped distract me. It was Christmas Eve. I was quiet all day long, and even more so than usual. Anton noticed, and had a talk with me after dinner. "You okay, buddy?" I nodded my head. Yes. Despite my assurance that I was okay, I could tell I wasn't. He all knew exactly what was on my mind. "Come here, Miles. Let me show you the things." I followed him to the living room when he pulled the curtains aside. "See these windows?" He slapped his hand on the pane to show me how solid it was. "This is the strongest window they make for residences. My company installed these. They're unbreakable. No way that somebody can come in from the outside." I stared at the window while on the other side blackness enveloped the house. He took me over to the door. "See how strong this is? It would take a tank to knock this door down. The back door too. And there's no other way in." He led me over to the alarm control panel that was on the wall. "This is the best system they make. I installed it myself." He kneeled down to my level. "Miles, you're safe here. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can get in here unless we let them." He glanced at the side with his eyes. "And don't tell your aunt I showed you this." He moved his coat aside so that I could see the holstered pistol he was wearing. "Just some added protection. But I won't even need this." I nodded, feeling a little bit safer, but not completely. I still worried not only for myself, but for Janine and Anton as well. Bedtime approached, and Aunt Janine, with an insight usually reserved for long-time mothers, knew the one thing that would make my night a little bit easier. "Miles, do you want to sleep in our room tonight?" she asked. "Yes." I smiled and nodded at the invitation. We would all be able to look out for each other. They'd protect me, and I'd be able to warn them if someone came in. They put some soft blankets on the ground for me right next to their bed. It was all in a nice protected spot in the large gap between the bed and the wall. I couldn't fall asleep for several hours, but I could hear both Janine and Anton begin their nightly slumbers. Their breathing became rhythmic and almost melodic. I listened intently for any noises that might have been coming out of the ordinary, but nothing abnormal sounded out. There was a clock ticking somewhere in the house, and the occasional car passed outside. Finally, my weariness overpowered my uneasiness, and I began my night's sleep. The dream I had that night was unlike any I'd had before. I was in what appeared to be a large garage, and the type where mechanics worked on cars. All around me, automotive parts were spread out along the ground. Tires were stacked up. Old rusted chassis filled the center of the room. Grime dripped from the walls. The area was lit by a single overhead lamp. I instantly knew I was dreaming, even though this was the first time I'd experienced a lucid dream. From the corner of the garage I heard metal clanging. I turned around to face the sound, and out of the darkness the man who'd taken the lives of my parents emerged. He spit some phlegm onto the ground and wiped his mouth before addressing me. "Hey, kid, don't worry, I ain't gonna hurt you. I'd like to, though. I'd really like to be able to shut you up, but it don't work that way." Despite my grimy surroundings, and perhaps because it was just a dream, this didn't feel like a place of anger and fear. Unlike the year before, I was able to find my voice right away. "Why do you want me to shut up? I hardly ever even speak." When you consider some of the other obvious questions, I know it may sound strange that I chose to open with that. Who was this man, and why did he take interest in me? Those are the questions I was really thinking, but my participation in the dream was guided, as if my actions weren't wholly my own. The man finally responded. "Oh, you quiet one's the loudest of all. You'll never stop thinking, thought after thought. You kids can't just shut your brains off. Give me just one loud enough. Those kids never think about anything. Tell you what, if it was up to me, I'd just rip all your fucking heads off and be done with it. But like I said, it don't work that way. I ain't allowed to hurt a kid." I looked around and came to a slow realization. This isn't my dream, is it? "That's a stupid question. You ever dreamed a place like this?" "Of course not. This is my dream, kid. I'm parked right outside your house. I just wanted to take a moment to peek in on you." My fear of this man, which had been otherwise controlled at this point, slowly began creeping back. He saw the look of despair spread across my face. "You been a good boy this year?" He gave a little chuckle. "Actually, yes, you have been. You remember what I said last time? I give kids what they ask for, the good ones and the bad ones." I shook my head. "I didn't ask for anything." I spoke with a confidence that I didn't really feel. "Sure you did. You kids always ask for something, and don't you worry now, because you're going to get it." The room and the man began to fade away. "See you next year, kid. I get the feeling that you and I are going to be part of each other's lives for some time." Those were the last words I heard. Pure whiteness consumed me, and then I slept. Peacefully. My eyes opened. Outside the window I could see the grey sky that signaled the approaching dawn. The house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. I stayed fixed on my bed on the floor, listening for signs of life from my aunt and uncle, but I could only hear my own heartbeat. I wanted to sit up and look over to them, but I was afraid of what I'd find. The dream felt so real, I wasn't sure what to think. I continued to listen. "Please," I whispered to myself, "let me hear them breathe." Several minutes passed. I still heard nothing. Tears began to stream down my face, and my pillow became wet. I knew deep inside that eventually I would have to look and see if they were okay. I couldn't lay on the floor all day, but my gut instinct told me that I didn't want to witness what was up there. Drawing upon my deepest strengths, I put my hands over my eyes and sat up. Slowly I moved a single finger away from my teary eye. There was no blood, no gore. Pulled my hands away fully from my face so that I could see Uncle Anton's chest clearly rise and fall. He was sleeping peacefully and very quietly. Aunt Janine turned in her sleep and mumbled a few nonsense words before resuming her silent rest. I smiled, and then laughed in relief. I could see no evidence that the man had been there. It was still early, but any sense of sleepiness had been pushed away by my early feeling of dread. I stood up and walked over to the mirrored closet door. I looked at my red eyes, wiped them dry, while behind me I could see the reflection of my aunt and uncle sleeping soundly. There's no need to wake them. I left the room with the intent of getting something to eat. Most likely a bowl of cereal. I walked down the hallway and passed by the alarm panel on the wall. All the lights were green, the doors, the windows, they were all secure. Nobody could have gotten in. Now fully relaxed, I passed through the living room on my way to the dining area. That's when I saw it. Sitting right on top of the dining room table. I froze in place and looked around to see if there was anything else out of place, but everything else was as it should be, and I turned again to the table and stared at the beautifully wrapped gift box that definitely hadn't been there the night before. It was a large box, maybe about 18 inches square. The wrapping paper that covered it was bright red with sparkles all over it. A pretty green bow covered the top. My aunt and uncle had agreed that we wouldn't be celebrating Christmas that year, yet there sat a gift upon the dining room table. I wondered if they changed their minds. I walked slowly towards the gift. Step by step, I stood up on one of the dining room chairs so that I could see at the top of the gift. Whoever had wrapped it had taken their time. The box's lid was wrapped separately from the box itself. I lifted it up. And then I peered inside. There was no fade to white for me that time. No. I saw exactly what was in that box, and simultaneously 3 truths occurred to me. The first truth was that the man had been in my house. Despite all this security measure, he'd gotten in without raising a single alarm. The second truth was that the man had been right. I'd asked for something without realizing it. The third truth was the sinking acceptance that his visits would be an annual occurrence. I stood there on the chair, staring into my parents' dried-out eyes, which were still in their heads, which were both in the box. I'd sat out onto the back, and the man, however he did it, had heard me, and granted my wish in a manner befitting his evil ways. The ultimate truth I learned from that day was that there could be no mess-ups with my behavior. I could want for nothing. I was constantly watched, and my mind was being constantly invaded. Bad actions would be severely punished, and good behavior would lead to its own sick and twisted reward. And that's the story of how a well-behaved boy became a perfectly behaved boy. And as a perfectly behaved boy, all my desires had to be held in check. Emotionally speaking, I had to become less than human so that a visitor would have no fuel for the wicked game he played. Of course, nobody's truly perfect. And there were slip-ups throughout the following years, times when I had inadvertently made a wish or asked for something. Those slip-ups were very costly to me, but I don't care to recount the full extent of them here. I think I've given enough of myself tonight. I'm wary and beating. But what I will tell you is that after 30 years, I'm no longer finally afraid. To finally say that I would want the painful memories to go away. I don't want them anymore. I even said it aloud. I want the memories to be gone. It's cold outside. It's getting late. I think I'll make myself a hot cup of cocoa. peppermint before turning in. That'll make me happy. For the first time in ages, I'm at calm and at peace. Looking out the window, I can see all the pretty lights on the eaves of the houses. I don't think I ever really had the chance to appreciate just how festive they make everything look. For a long time, I just didn't care, but now I'm going to take a few moments to enjoy them while I can. Good night, everyone. Merry Christmas. That wasn't that bad. I thought that was an interesting take on the gift-giving character. You know, you watch what you careful what you wish for, all that jazz, monkey paw, and all that stuff. I think it could have been a little bit less corny. There's a lot of the time I see internet stories that are written in with a certain sort of pulpy nature to them. Like there's a certain level of I don't know. There's something about the language that just kind of weirds me out a little bit. But yeah, that was an interesting take on Santa Claus and Christmas. That guy definitely died afterwards. You see what he wished for? Memories to go away? You're dead. No more memories, no more life. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Yeah, that's Christmas for you. Don't ask too much or you'll die. Don't. That's not how that works. That's not how Christmas works. But in any case, just don't be asking too much. Or you'll be getting too much. You know what I'm saying? Bada bing. In any case, thank you all for listening to the Spook Zone for December. I had a really good time this year. I would have liked to have been here more often, but I am a combination of human and a bit lazy. So hey ho, I can't be here every day, or every Friday I should say. Most Fridays at least. Yeah. Thank you all for watching, everybody. Merry Christmas when the time comes. 25th of December will be a great time for all. Hopefully you're not terrified of some evil smoking character to come over here and go, hey buddy, I'm going to kill your parents. It's going to be fine. Don't be afraid. I hope you have a very good winter. I hope you have a very good rest of the year. I hope you have a good finals week if you're having exams. But above all, stay spooked.